Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I hope everyone is doing okay today. Let me check my sound, make sure my sound is okay and good. Guys, I want to thank everyone for the assistance you guys give to the channel. And I also want to give shout out to people who are so nice to me. When I found out that they essentially demonetized the entirety of this channel. Still angry about that, but is what it is. You push on. Can't do anything about it right now. That said, the super chat may be down from the standpoint of the regular way they go about it, but I found an alternative, the super chat, that's just below. I have a little link in the description box. And with a click and, supporting the channel, you will get to give I don't know if you can still see the message with this one. I'm still looking for a widget that would allow people to see the message, but you will get your own little Star Trek animated GIF to pop up and dance and shake with your contribution to the show. And the contribution to the show changes with the amount that you give. I got to be honest, I am ashamed to admit how long I've sat here the last hour or so and played along with the animated GIFs to get up and kind of wiggle and shake. So, also, today, I spent my day doing lab work, sitting in the hospital. Now, I was giving lab work because my wife and I were going to go traveling for a bit, and I need to have that before I leave the country. And she was nice enough to go with me to show how awesome my wife is, was nice enough to go and sit in a doctor's office with me and to have to go to another doctor's office because the previous doctor's office didn't necessarily do all of the lab work. That today is her birthday. And not just her birthday. We have this added interesting distinction where her birthday is also our anniversary. Today's our anniversary. This was us. 2 years ago, today, to this very day, getting married in Iceland and getting rained on while getting married in Iceland. She's out with my mom now getting cake. She's out with my mom now getting cake. So yeah, there's that. So I'm sending a shout out, a happy anniversary shout out. And John Lupacard, thank you very much. Happy anniversary and a happy birthday. Or a happy birthday and a happy anniversary. So, that was such a weird and funny day. Iceland has very few gas stations. At the very least, when you leave Reykjavik, and even in Reykjavik, very few gas stations because there are so very few people in Iceland. It's a huge place with about as many people as I think like Illinois or something like that, or Kansas, I think was the comparison. And we nearly ran out of gas. Literally, the car was on E as we saw the gas station in sight, and it had been on E for a while with the blinking light. And it was one of those things where you're in a shitty situation with somebody, and we've been together for like 5 years. So, whether we've been, even though it was our honeymoon, even though we had just gotten married, literally on the spot, just got married. We've been together for like 5 years prior. I wanted to make sure she wasn't nuts before I married her. I was like, man, make sure that's not crazy. I don't want to be chained to anybody that's a lunatic. And so it took a while. The funny part about it is, we got into the car. We had to drive so far to get to the marriage site because Reykjavik had ran out of marriage centers. So we had to drive like 2 hours to get to the marriage site. And once we got to the marriage site, the world was good. And we were like, hey, let's go to the waterfalls. While we're here, let's go to the waterfalls. Now, in our head, it's like, yeah, the tank's on E, but we'll find gas once we get to the place. Oh, bad idea if you're in Iceland. But if you didn't know that, well, you'll go driving into the middle of nowhere where you have cows and goats, and there's like one restaurant, And then you have more cows and goats, and there's nothing there. And there's a waterfall in the middle of nowhere, and you go, there's a waterfall in the middle of nowhere. Okay, this is nice. You're driving in areas where the car really shouldn't be because some of the spots are not like paved or whatever. And it's like, all right, what do you want to do? Should we go ahead to try to get to the waterfall? I mean, our gas is getting kind of low. Or should we go back? Now, the decision is, all right, let's just look for a gas station. Let's look for a gas station. And so we said, fine. So we go driving, and we're like, look, I don't know where a gas station is. So my wife pulls up the GPS, and she's on the phone. She says, all right, here's a gas station. She's navigating. She's a navigator. And we're like, all right, great. So we're driving, and take a left here, take a right here. And it's like the gas is getting low. The gas is, for the most part, on E. And we pull into a spot, and it's a boat. And the fucking thing said, get on the boat and go across the river to get to the gas station, which was several miles later. And it was like, this was the motherfucker moment. Because like, motherfucker. Because that boat doesn't allow cars to get on that boat, which means the GPS should have never included a gas station in this scenario. But whatever. So I walk out and I go talk to the guy to see if we can get on. And they're like, yeah, we don't take those things. And I'm seething. And it's like this like seething anger who you can't really be mad at anybody. So it's like nondescript. So you're just kind of like angry. Not angry at any, it's like unfocused anger. And you're just kind of like, just, motherfucker, I just got married. I'm in my goddamn tux. And you're like pissed off. And my wife goes and talks to one of the, and I love his reaction. He goes and talks to one of the guys from who's manning the boat. And she says, hey, do you guys take cars? And he's like, no, we don't take cars. And he said, okay, do you guys have a gas station here? Like, our car is literally on E. And he's like, yeah, no, it's a different type of gas. We don't do that. And she's like, okay. And he tells her, be calm. It'll be okay. And it's like, be calm. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? We're out of gas. You're telling me to be calm. Hey, it's easy for you to be calm, buddy. You're about to get on that boat and go somewhere else, that's going to have a gas station. We drive back to the place where we got married. And you talking about an anniversary miracle, man, that we made it back. I have no idea how we made it back. So I'll say it that way. But we made it back. It was great. And we end up, from that point, going to the other waterfall. I can't pronounce it well. It was the waterfall near the place where where the volcano erupted. Also, one last story before I get to the main story. We go to this restaurant nearby. And in this restaurant, it's like fresh milk, fresh everything. It's like a farm. They have a farm. And my wife goes outside to get something. She's like, I think they were killing a cow. She said, I heard a cow give this guttural scream, and I think they're killing a cow. And it just so happened I was ordering steak. Now, I felt bad for that cow. To be fair, I don't think that was the same cow. In fact, I'm almost sure that wasn't the same cow. That cow was fucking amazing. Like it was a fresh farm. It wasn't like they weren't, torturing the animals and all this other stuff. All right, let's get to the main story. An upbeat story. Before going to something that's less so. I saw this. Release. Just from Center for American Progress. Joint Center for American Progress and American Enterprise Institute report outlines reforms needed to defend Europe and European Union, NATO, and other institutions. I love that. We need to defend everything. Everything is on attack. Everything is being attacked. We need to defend it all. The entire world order is under assault, and we need to join forces to defend it. Now, the beautiful part of this is, if you don't know, Center for American Progress is essentially the Clintonites. Clinton, Obama, Neera Tanden, this group of that wing of the establishment party of the Democratic Party. American Enterprise Institute, Bushites, the Republican, the conservative groups, joining forces. We need to put it all to the side and to defend what we got. I love that. Fucking love it. Absolutely love it. The reason I love this is because ultimately they're the same. Like, they have a modicum of difference in the degree to which they believe how much should be taken. Meaning, there's a speech that Obama gave where he was chest thumping for the globalists in the world order. Hey, I mean, you know, some people say that Obama is hanging out with this 1% crowd, you know, and making this argument about the rich and the wealthy and everything else, and essentially a chest thump for we should defend the world order. Now, the amazing part of this is their interests are, for the most part, in alignment with one another. They like to quote this as these populist movements, as if these movements are inherently authoritarian. They are not inherently authoritarian. Fact is, the Democratic Party has been stemming a populist movement in this country, and they're talking about doing the same thing in Britain. What they consider to be the world order that's coming apart is essentially the public waking up to some degree and seeing what the hell is taking place, even if they can't understand or process it fully in the language. They understand that the public dislikes the way things have been going. And they are saying, we need to do something in order to hold the line on the way things already are. I love that. This is, you could say, the alt center, if you want to call it that, to coin a phrase, trying to hold the line of the status quo, with both sides of the elites realizing that their interests, for the most part, are not all that different. And at the very least, from a standpoint, I keep saying this, I keep making this argument that we're not that divided, talking about from the standpoint of the left and aspects of the right. At least those aspects of the right that were able to switch between Trump and Obama. And even those aspects of the right that may have not necessarily considered this idea of something else that's to the left, but that is not the Democratic Party. And that's somewhat of an important distinction. If you are somewhat of a Republican and you're somewhat of a cultural Republican and you start hearing all of these ideas and you're like, wait a minute, these people don't consider themselves Democrats. And these people are saying things that I kind of like. It feels kind of dirty, but I like it. Those people may actually you may gain their ear, but you may not necessarily gain their ear if you're wearing the label of a D. The elites in this case have acknowledged in this joint report that their interests are not that divided. I'm making the point that if they're acknowledging that their interests are not that divided, I think the rest of us also need to realize that all of us are in the same goddamn boat. Let's take a look at this report. I love this report. This report is awesome to read. It's terrifying and awesome at the same time. Release. Joint CAP and AEI report outlines reforms needed to defend Europe and the European Union and NATO and other institutions. Defending the European Union, NATO, and other transatlantic institutions will require a robust, forward-looking reform, according to a new joint report from scholars at the Center for American Progress and American Enterprise Institute. The current populist backlash against the international cooperation, multilateralism, and the transatlantic alliance was long in the making. European allies failed to invest in their military capabilities, and military interventions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya mired the United States and Europe in a long and costly war. What? Let's read that again. The current populist populist backlash against international cooperation, multilateralism, and the transatlantic alliance was long in the making. Yes, European allies failed to invest in their military capabilities, okay, and military interventions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya mired the United States and Europe in long and costly wars. That's just an odd thing, and it does to some degree get across how the person who's writing this is looking at the world. The current populist backlash against international cooperation, multilateralism, and transatlantic. Okay, I get that part. And then it goes to European allies failed to invest in their military capabilities and interventions in Afghanistan. Yes, this is true. This part. The military interventions in Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya mired the United States and Europe in long and costly wars. The part that gets me is this part. European allies failed to invest in their military capabilities. What does it have to do with the populist backlash in Europe? Okay, let's keep going. Maybe I'm missing something. I mean, even this part. This part I get. I get this part if you're talking about from the standpoint of... Let me explain my point. From my stance, from my point, from my disposition, looking out at the world, I say, look, the United States has spent all of this money in their military operations. That money was not necessarily invested in roads and bridges and people and human beings. That wasn't invested in spurring this kind of economic, and not just that, it wasn't shared in a way where it would be excessive pressure on the people of that particular culture and that particular society. Meaning, you squandered your money. Your money was being wasted in these wasted wars and wasteful wars. Bush invaded that country. They spent like $1 trillion, $7 trillion, if I'm not mistaken. Not to mention, the 4,000 Americans and the over 1 million Iraqis. So when I look at this and I say, yeah, they're right. We've wasted a huge amount of money that could have been invested in us. In us. Imagine the insanity. We can spend $1 trillion a year killing people around the globe. But if you say, we can send whatever kid we want to go to school for a few, $50 billion, $60 billion, that's too much. We can't afford that. It's like, wait, you telling me that we can spend all of this money murdering and killing people, but the moment that you say we should invest in our own kids' education, that's too much. Yes. Straight face. Straight face. You bring this thing up, but a healthcare, same thing. With a straight face, they would say that's too costly. Missing the point that it's billions of dollars less, saves billions of dollars to do that, to make sure each and every person can have access to healthcare, especially when you come into cost savings and everything else. Again, with a straight face, they would say that too much. Federal jobs guarantee, that's too much. Things that you could have been spending that money on to essentially make the life of the citizens in your particular country better was too expensive. But war, not so much. That's okay. We can spend whatever we want. They passed, almost nearly $1 trillion on a whim. No discussion, no pushback, no nothing. Yes, let's just spend that money and go murder some folks. Yes, that is awesome for our economy. That's what we get. Now, if you're asking me, would stress on a society, people's lives getting harder in a society, make them less happy with that society? I would say yes. I would say absolutely yes. Hands down, completely yes. Yes. So, interventions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Libya mired the United States and Europe in long costly wars. Yeah, that's true. It goes beyond that, though. It's not just the major interventions. It's also the minor interventions. The destabilization of the region by supporting certain dictators or putting certain people in offices. It goes beyond just our long interventions. To some degree, the minor micro interventions yielded larger repercussions. The blowbacks, as they call it. But I don't know what that has to do with our quote-unquote European allies failing to invest in their military. Why would Europe need to invest in their military if NATO is sitting on their country and the United States, for the most part, has decided to take the lion's share of the military burden? I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do it. Why would I spend billions on military? Why would I do that? President Donald Trump's assault on Europe as a partner is being met by growing anti-Americanism across the Atlantic. That's not... Jesus Christ. All right, let's keep going. I'm sorry. A growing cohort of political leaders seeking to weaken European and transatlantic bonds and to accept, rather than stand up to Russia's aggression, said Vikram Singh, senior fellow at the CAP. This report explores ways to reinvigorate the transatlantic partnership in a politically sustainable and even populist way. Oh, I love the way they steal rhetoric. They're stealing language. In a politically sustainable, I don't know what that means, but even populist way. I love the way it's a defense of the status quo, but he just can't help but adding the political Orwellianness to it at the end. Let's pick this part. President Donald Trump's assault on the Europe as a partner is being met by growing anti-Americanism across the Atlantic. No, Donald Trump's assault on a European partner, that's not what's causing anti-Americanism across the world. Like, look, if you believe that America is justice and light, truth, justice, in an American way, and that we are out there doing what's best for the rest of the world, you're sadly mistaken. I'm sorry to tell you. It is not true. There's no way you can look in the world and think that. Now, for many Americans, that would be a shock to hear, but it is utterly true. Now, say for the moment, however, you're not an American. Say you live in Guatemala, in the 50s or so, and the American government, working with the CIA, toppled your government and put in a dictator in order to get rid of workers' rights. You would feel a particular way about that. You would completely feel a particular way. This country they called the guy who you put in office a communist and usurped your country for the discretion, at the discretion of a corporation. And in doing so, was able to get worse workers' rights with military rule. America doesn't look like truth and justice from that perspective, does it? What about Allende in Chile? Doesn't look like truth and justice again from that perspective. What about Iran? That damn sure doesn't look like truth and justice. What about Vietnamese? Do you know that the Vietnamese, the reason why they were taking that cadence from the standpoint of that government is because they were under the boot of a French society. And being under the boot of the French in this way, they looked at it and say, if France is saying this is what democracy looks like, this is what liberal democracies look like, if this is what liberal democracies do, put the boot on the throat of other nations, then I don't want to be a liberal democracy. Now, when France handed Vietnam over to the United States goes in and doesn't give two shits about the perspective of the Vietnamese in this particular situation. They go in like a hammer and proceeds to kill and murder. Didn't look like freedom and democracy there either. Look, I'm making this point that the moment that you stop looking at this country as freedom and democracy and you look at it from the perspective of other nations, then it looks like, as polls show around the world, they're terrified of us. They're terrified of us for good reason, because we look like maniacs. Now, that's not Trump. That didn't start with Trump. It might have gotten worse with Trump, but it didn't start with Trump and pretending that the world or the United States fell off a cliff from the standpoint of optics. And Trump misses the boat and is not even truthful. Let's go to the other part. This article annoyed me, so let's pick through it. A growing cohort of political leaders seeking to weaken Europe and transatlantic bonds to accept rather than stand up to Russia's aggression. Let's be clear. What they are considered to be aggression is by taking their words, if we're going but with what they're saying about this, meaning if you take their argument, a spearfishing on John Podesta was an attack on democracy itself. And the spearfishing that released information showing that Hillary Clinton, one of the political people in this country running in the Democratic Party, the most hated woman in politics with the exception of Donald Trump himself, was cheating Bernie Sanders. That's what they're saying. It's an attack on democracy. They're saying a bunch of Facebook and Twitter ads are half of which took place after the election is tantamount to an attack on democracy. An attack on democracy. Listen to these words. This is an amazing thing. I love these words. An attack on democracy itself. It wasn't even messing with a political campaign. It is a destruction of the democratic process in this country. That is an amazing thing to say. That's an amazing thing to say. Because we're not dealing with political people at this point. We're dealing with concepts in these esoteric meaning of words. Democracy, freedom, justice. Russians attacked democracy by releasing factually true information showing that one of the candidates was attacking democracy. Fucking amazing. But this is what they're talking about. These words are being conflated into these larger ideas that completely, at some point, skew the meaning and obstruct what actually took place. Let's keep going. And by the way, this pushback, yeah, let's save that for the next thing. Let's keep going. Danielle Pleca, Senior Vice President of the AEI, American Enterprise Institute, noted, even when they instinctually diagnose the problem correctly, the authoritarian populist proposes remedies ultimately harm the patient, undermining alliances, trade wars, appeasement of dictators, and absolutists, often racist, anti-immigrant policies, all in badly for free nations. Wow, I love this. I love this. This is awesome. I'm geeking out on this paper. I love this. Senior Vice President of AEI noted, even when they instinctually diagnose the problem correctly. Here's the catch. This is putting an example as if the solutions that the status quo has proposed were actual solutions. Newsflash. If the status quo worked, we wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be writing this letter. Just somewhat as a matter of fact, what you've wanted to do to the world has failed. Or at the very least, the world has not necessarily wanted to go along with those plans. I love this term globalist. And I use this term, let me explain my terms. There are a certain group of people in this world that want to maintain this world status quo. I am not one of those people. I don't like the status quo. I don't like this idea of resources being sucked up to the top and these trade deals that fuck over nations as opposed to real, genuine, some level of fair trade. That's not what we got. We got a situation that massively advantaged a very top 0.01% of the population, and to some degree, fucked over everyone else. I don't think the point in this world is to work. Even though I understand that to some degree my wife calls me somewhat of a workaholic. The point in this world is to live. We've missed the boat. And I understand, we didn't look at this world from the standpoint of what do we need to do to get our resources to make sure we can sustain ourselves. And then after that point, live our lives. Well, we've been essentially working to give shitload of resources to a small top 1% and making it for everyone else fighting the scraps. I'm saying that needs to change. And part of the reason that we're here today having this particular conversation with them writing this particular letter, feeling this much under assault that they would even have to write this particular letter, is because of the way resources have been distributed on this planet under this particular capitalistic system. This is not an act of God. This is an act of policy. And there are certain people who like to keep certain policies to persist this particular way of being. I'm saying that needs to change. I believe that there is, in the same way they recognize that their interests are somewhat of in alignment, there's a group of anti-establishment in the left and the right that are believing, or at the very least starting to realize, the same. That's my point. Let's go to the next line. And by the way, to some degree, This is correct to this measure. There are some people who want to weaken transatlantic bonds. It's not weaken per se. They want to be nation states. They don't want these trade deals. It's a difference in those things. You have to listen to the language. This report explores ways to reinvigorate. Where's another part? There's another part. Oh, right here. Even when they diagnose the problem correctly, the authoritarian populist proposes remedies that ultimately harm the patient. That is true, but status quo is the same. Essentially, the same people who are writing this document would also propose remedies that would hurt the patient, or at the very least try to keep things the way it is. Keep in mind, this is a defense of status quo. Undermining alliances, trade wars. Now, this part is right, because the right wing doesn't have an answer for this. I mean, ultimately, the right wing answer is fascism. So it's not necessarily that this document is completely all that off in the way that they're criticizing Trump on this. It's that the criticism is coming from somebody who also has no answer, and who, to some degree, has propagated this very condition. Let's keep going. The report recognizes the need to change and argues for reform in institutions vital to global peace and security. NATO must adopt, I love this, we need to do something that helps peace and security, and then immediately they jump to an organization who was set up as a security force who, once the Soviet Union went bust, it also should have went bust because it didn't have a reason to exist, and yet it leapt along looking for reasons to exist and latched on to terrorism and latched on to whatever, let's be honest, the United States wanted it to attack. I love the way they jump from peace and security and then add NATO. NATO must adapt a new security environment. The European Union needs to stop stumbling from one crisis to the next through reform and fealty to its founding values. Both the political right and left need to innovate to ensure economic openness remains a cornerstone and broad prosperity. This document has said nothing about change per se. And here's a few points. The report recognizes the need. There's one more point. This right here. Look, here's the thing. The people are pushing back on this, not because they're against interacting globally. Their issue has more to do with interacting globally in a fair way. And this has been somewhat of an exploitive relationship between classes, because one class had benefited magnificently off of this thing of being able to put American companies in China, get it made in China, then ship it back into the United States to be bought. Well, you've just fired American workers in order to pull that off. Or, for that matter, automating processes. Now, the fact is, automating processes is a fucking awesome thing. The problem is, the way we organize ourselves, it becomes this thing that attacks workers and attack labor, which goes back to my point that the point should necessarily be work, the point necessarily be to live, with robots and machines doing most of the work. But again, we don't organize ourselves that way. And ultimately, we have a top 1% that owns that stuff. The last part of this report that I want to discuss, we recognize the need for change. All right, what does that mean? What does that mean? Also, NATO must adopt a new security environment. What does that mean? The European Union must stop stumbling from one crisis to the next through reform. Well, here's the catch. The European Union is stumbling through one crisis through the next. You attack a country. After you attack that country, you completely destabilize that country. People from that country go fleeing in the other countries. As they go fleeing in the other countries, those countries to some degree start to get destabilized, at the very least the country that's beside it. You have a lot of other countries that don't like the person who's in charge of one of those countries, and so they cobble together in this kind of conspiratorial way, and they decided that they were going to invest in people that are in opposition to that government. Now, people in that country also dislike that government. And so when those people started getting together and started making noises, the people who were outside from other countries decided to invest their resources and money and soldiers and support and logistics to essentially trying to take that guy out of office by force. As that becomes a war, it started to rage on in a way where refugees start fleeing the country because, after all, they're human beings, and any human being that's rational is going to try to leave the war zone if they don't want to be a part of the war zone. And you have people fleeing Syria into Europe in droves. Now, Europe becomes somewhat destabilized from the number of refugees that starts fleeing into Europe. And the people in Europe are like, whoa, all these fucking people. I'm not racist, but shit, man, I'm uncomfortable with that. That's different than what I am accustomed to. And they are going to come into our communities and they're going to start that Sharia law shit. And oh God, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with that. I'm not racist, but. Now, you know, you get a large influx of people who are different than you coming into a particular society. You always are going to expect a certain number of people to react in a particular way just as a rebuff from the number of people coming in. It's almost, you can count on it. It's almost like gravity. You know there's going to be a percentage of people who dislike what's taking place. And under normal circumstances, are perfectly nice people to deal with. Thank you, Pat. Perfectly nice people to deal with. And they flip out. And so in France, you end up with something like Marie Le Pen. In Germany, you get Angela Merkel losing popularity, like gangbusters losing popularity, almost to the point of being taken out of her seat. And you have all of these meetings with these countries trying to come together. You have Orban, I think in Hungary, who's essentially pushing back against the European Union. You get the Five Star Movement or whatever it's called in Italy, that is Eurosceptics. You get a lot of countries putting people in offices that is responding. Now, here's the catch. You also get Jeremy Corbyn. Because it's not so much that the immigration thing is purely an immigration issue. To some degree, that's also an economic issue because people make the argument, or the right makes the argument, that these immigrants are going to take your jobs. Meaning any immigration issue is not just an issue of racism, it's also an issue of my job. Meaning if my economic security is at stake to any degree, the right-wing argument of these immigrants are coming into the country and they're a drain on our resources and they may be taking your jobs. If my economic security, if my access to the things that I need is put into question, yeah, the person may take issue with people coming into the country. May take issue. Whether that's right or wrong or not is kind of besides the point. I'm just saying it is. It will happen. It would happen almost instinctively. You know what's going to happen. So, in this situation, the argument here that they're making is NATO needs to get a stronger military. Well, you can make an argument that the military, to some degree, was part of the reason why Europe was destabilized, why they are writing this in the first place, why many of those governments, meaning Angela Merkel and many of the other types, were destabilized. The populist movements didn't necessarily come out of a vacuum. Those things came out of multiple factors that were taking place, meaning the austerity that was being applied in Europe, not just austerity, the immigrant thing, coming from the refugees that were coming from Syria. It was multiple factors. But the status quo that is in there now was responsible for all of them. That's the point that I'm getting at. I mean, that's not even hitting on the Wall Street stuff where the things to go belly up. Obama comes in and protects the bankers, throws his body to protect the bankers. But yeah, didn't care too much about the homeowners as they go bust. This document is some degree infuriating, but necessary. Because ultimately it gives you this idea that the Bushites and the Clintonites are fundamentally the same, with a certain degree of latitude in how rapacious we should be. considering Obama gave 95% of the wealth to the top 1%. I don't know how much worse Bush could have did in another term. So, this one has gone remarkably long. And we have 100 people here, so we have a decent crowd. Let's see, who's here? My point is, look, my main point, these two groups are fundamentally the same. And the anti-establishment left and the anti-establishment right needs to get their shit together, because on the things to which you agree, you should push like nobody's business, because they are. They are. What? Jamal Thomas, they took our gerbs. I don't know what that means. I'll bowl like a leper. I don't know what that means. Merkel is a crypto. I don't know what that means either. J. Oliver. J. Pam Ryan. I know what you mean. It's awful dealing with the propaganda masses on a daily basis. Yes. Schwari Kate. Stephen Carl, you worked for The Nation. Stephen Carl. What's Stephen Carl? There's a Stephen Carl here. Everyone that worked for The Nation election blog team that was pushing progressive ideas was shat on the entire year by Chris Hayes. He was our editor. This was the pre-MSNBC show. Stephen Carl. Interesting. Interesting. Stephen Carl, that name sounds familiar to me. The name sounds familiar. If you are willing to come on for an interview, I'd love to have you. Jamal, what would be better? A stronger, more powerful NATO or third ball? Is the third ball functional? Is it functional? Like, does it give more of a bang for our buck? Like, does it? You know what I mean? I'm being gross, but my bad. Somebody gave something. Let's do this. Let's pull this up. Oh, Elephants on Coke. I realize why I hate American liberals. Their liberal definition of conservative. Happy with the status quo, adverse to change, neoliberal. Indeed, by the way, careful with that term globalist. I don't want to hear you scream about gay frogs. No. Like, what I mean by globalist, I'm being very specific in the meaning. Ish. Very specific-ish, which I guess is the opposite of specific. What I mean by it is a group of people, for the most part, that's trying to maintain the status quo on the idea of trade. Like, we love trade, we love openness, but ultimately what they mean by trade is somewhat of an exploitation. It's a top 1% getting a ton based off of the order of things with certain policies that they believe, given this kind of incrementalist progressive policy, while at the same token expropriating large amounts of cash to the top 1%, especially from the standpoint of trade. So something like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, TISA, these things that would attack workers while at the same token allow corporations run naked. A certain degree of corporatism, I guess, is what I mean by it. It's sometimes hard to convey everything that you want in a particular term, but take out the weird right-wing stuff. I mean this in a left-leaning way. And I mean the order of things. How things are currently arranged in our society and the people who want to keep those things that particular way. This capitalistic order of things. So Obama out there giving speeches, giving this kind of praise to the top 1%. These guys writing the saying, we need to fight the populist revolts. Well, one of those populist revolts that they were fighting is Jeremy Corbyn in England calling a man an anti-Semite. Or here in the United States, where the Democratic Party is putting their thumb on the scale all across the United States on lefties. They would scream about a better deal. Do you even hear in this document where they couldn't help themselves but said, this report explores ways to reinvigorate the transatlantic partnership in a politically sustainable, even populist way. They're fighting the populace. And yet, they want to coat themselves in a modicum of populousness. I love that. Absolutely love that. It's fucking awesome. Propaganda in action. Elephants on Coke. The reason oh, you said it. Oh, yeah, you said it again. Jean-Luc Picard. To boldly go where no one has gone before. Oh, he's attacking Jean-Luc. Attacking Jean-Luc. I'm offended by the attack on Jean-Luc. I'm joking. The Max. Have you heard of Cal Kalinske of Secular Talk? Yeah. I think he would agree with your politics. Yeah, I like Cal. Cal is badass. Cal is badass. Rachel Maddow did a segment celebrating the Obama troop deployment. That's sad. That's sad. I was hoping for a thorough bashing of Bill and W, but JT had to take the high road. You know what's funny? When I start my videos, I have I usually do research and then I have the thoughts in my head. And I do video while the thoughts are in my head, and so the stuff kind of gets processed a particular way. And when I pulled the picture, I thought a rapist and a war criminal. And I thought I could start the video, going with this idea of a rapist and a war criminal. But the problem was, it's hard to transition from, hey, here's, it's our anniversary and it's my wife's birthday and here's the wedding pictures and here's this rapist and a criminal, so it's kind of hard to make that transition. So it didn't come out that way. But yeah. But yeah. Yep, that's our Rachel, all right. Yeah. Conspiracy theorist in chief. That's her. All right, I'm going to end this because I haven't had food yet for today. And I will be back a little later in order to do a few more of these. Elephants on Coke and Jean-Luc Picard, thank you very much for your assistance. Your help for the show is always appreciated. It's weird, man. It's funny. I was trying to find a way to have the chat pop up in the side so the thing can pop up kind of like the super chat. I was trying to replicate the super chat in all of its features. Who did that? Replicate it in all of its features. But I sat here playing with these Star Trek. Fuck YouTube, pay the man. Jay Scott Vapes. Jay, man, I gotta tell you, man, I really appreciate it. Luca sent me a video of I think it was BB Hammer doing a video just kind of solidarity. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. God, I appreciate it. And yeah, it is fucked up. It is fucked up. They sent me a video today, or they sent me a canned response. Another canned response. Essentially saying, well, Mr. Thomas, it seems that you were copying videos or something. I was like, that's what the last video said. But what were the videos? I need to know the videos. It's like you can't even apply to get back into the program until apparently they do another review of your channel, which could take several weeks after the date. And it's like, yeah, but again, you haven't elucidated the videos. Ultimately, what you said prior, because look, it's like this. If I do a video and I don't care whether or not they take the money from me, meaning they would say this video can't be copyrighted because of, you can't get money on this video because this copyright belongs to someone else. Fair enough. What they end up doing is they say, we're going to take the money from this video, meaning any commercial money, and they're going to give it to the company. No issue. Because sometimes I don't care about the money on the video. I care more about getting the point across. And there's some videos where the person doesn't allow it at all, meaning there's some copyrights where the company says, we don't care if other people show it, we just want the money. And there are others where like, we don't want you to show the video at all. This video is forbidden. Well, that gets your strike when you do that. I don't have any strikes. I have no copyright strikes. You have situations where the companies will say, we will take the money, yes, but that's it. That's all I have. I have no strikes on my channel. And so it's as if they changed the rule all of a sudden. It's as if we did a review, and even though nothing up to this point has garnered a strike, We're still going to go through this process. This is fucking insane. It's one thing if you give a warning. It's one thing if you give a heads up. None of that. They just decided they're going to attack the channel. But whatever. Move forward. I can't do anything about it. And if I'm being honest, I've had so many nice people on Patreon to help out, so I appreciate it. Oh, and by the way, send your topics in, patrons, send your topics in, and we'll do the show for Friday. We can choose on the day, and we'll do the show on the day. So that should be fun. That should be fun. Oh, that would be an awesome T-shirt. God, that's an awesome T-shirt. Pay me T-shirt. Be all sorts of variations on that. Pay me bitches. I love it. Or full of orgy. Full of orgy is a good one too. YouTube obviously doesn't like your content. I don't care if they don't like it. You should consider switching to Twitch and having a format more like Hard Bastard. Hard Bastard is a show on Twitch? I didn't know that. Look, YouTube, I gotta be honest, I don't give a shit if they don't like my content. I mean, they decided that they wanted to have a platform. And in having that platform, you were going to get all sorts of people on that platform. If they were going to be a specific type of platform, if they were going to say, look, we're a centrist platform, they should have said that. They didn't say that. You're going to have right-wingers. You're going to have all sorts of people. You're going to have people talking about aliens. You're going to have people talking about demons. You're going to have Christians on the show. I mean, you are going to have all sorts of people on your channel. How can you not be agnostic towards the content on your channel? And why should you give a shit? The only thing you should care about is whether the content goes beyond certain bounds. And if it doesn't go beyond certain bounds, you're going to have people of all stripes of society that is listening to your show or watching your content, meaning your channel, YouTube for that matter. Yeah, they got to get over it. They got to get over it. So yeah. All right. I'm going to end this. Oh, what did Stephen Carl say? I'm curious about Stephen Carl. You got to ghost. All right, Shwari. Have a good one. She's an old poo. I got to go. Well, have a good one, Shwari. Thank you for joining in. I have a bag full of farmers market's produce. Dinner at home. Very nice. Lucky you. Lucky you. I have a sandwich from Wawa's. I have a sandwich from Wawa's. Send Ron Bacone a Page Mall t-shirt. Stephen Carl. Oh, God, I love that idea. I love that idea. Page Mall. I love that idea. People are going to be like, what the fuck does that mean? Well, there's a guy on YouTube who YouTube has decided to attack his account for at least a month. It's probably going to go for 2 months. Talking about the worst fucking timing. We're planning on leaving. It's so bizarre. When I decided to do this, I thought the problem with this arrangement, or the weak point in the arrangement, is that you're dealing with a faceless corporation, and that faceless corporation can make any rule or decision at any time that they want. Considering me working in IT, I know for myself that you can make any rule or change to the system or the algorithm, and it would make drastic changes. So I understood that part. And I thought, the risk here is that you need to get from point A to point B, meaning you need to get from the point where you're dependent on revenue from YouTube to the point where you're dependent on revenue from Patreon fast enough where if anything happens in an intervening time, or if anything happens, you're good. Meaning it has to be fast enough where an attack by YouTube wouldn't necessarily take out your capacity to do your content and your capacity to keep your audience. Because at that point, your audience would be the patrons, not necessarily the YouTube, because the patrons themselves would be the ones that are paying for the content. That was my thinking. Now, I looked at this and said, it's a risk. Life's a gamble. Try it. Fuck it. Let's go with it. And so I figured the world would be great because I didn't necessarily do anything off the wall on my channel. Nothing overtly offensive, nothing overtly brutal, and it's within a political space. And for the most part, I can back up what I say. Even if I'm wrong on something, it's not I'm wrong on something because I just made the shit up. I'm wrong. I may be wrong in my interpretation. Um, but this is like a low fucking blow. Like it's a curveball, but it's a curveball at a horrible fucking time, and in somewhat of a I would call it somewhat of a ridiculous way. Whatever. You move forward. I mean, fortunately, my patrons had jumped up at that point, so I wasn't necessarily completely undermined, but it's just aggravating. I would love if there was a union in this, because if there was a union, you could essentially have rules where you can say, all right, these are the rules that you follow, and they're not rules that are just kind of interpreted purely by the company itself. The rules are, to some degree, interpreted by both, as opposed to just this kind of faceless, authoritarian, totalitarian regime that is YouTube, even though it has, millions of people on the channel using it for business. But not so much. Nobody else cared about that. I was the only one. I was the lone man screaming for union. The lone man. I don't know if that's true, but still. All right, I'm going to end this because I'm just talking out of my ass at this point. I've been using Streamlabs, and I got to be honest. There's certain parts. I love the widgets. I've been sitting here playing around with the widgets. Innocent 99ers go to jail. Guilty 1%ers cover up excuses. Selective prosecution. Jamal, I donate, but I'm overdrawn till tomorrow. Oh, Trudy, fuck no. I don't. Look, I don't say this. Yeah, I guess I'm giving across the wrong impression. I don't say this for that reason. I say this more so because it's out of the blue, and it's on my mind because it's out of the blue. That's all. No, I don't say it for that reason, Fruity. Listen up, y'all. It's sabotage. I don't want to think sabotage. Unionizing, yes, go for it. Jay Oliver. I don't understand why that's not more natural for the YouTubers, for the left-wing YouTubers, if I'm being honest. Like, it seems like that would be the most natural thing in the world to say, especially the smaller channels, to kind of, cooperate. Trudy, no, I understand Trudy, but I am weirded out by the money part, if I'm being honest. Me talking about it is just more so being annoyed because in my head, it's theft, if that makes sense. This has nothing to do with the people who watch my channel, my patrons. It's more to do with what I consider to be YouTube fucking me over. You should get some design and merchants together, use YouTube as your free studio, but not depend on their money. Lawrence, no, Lawrence, I do agree with you. The problem is, there's a gap. There's always a point A to point B gap. It's like, so think of it as you've done a job for the last 8 years. And in doing that job for the last 8 years, you decide to do something else. Well, how are you going to do something else? You don't necessarily have any experience in something else, and you're starting from point A. Well, you continue to do what you're doing, and you start adding yourself into the other thing. Where in this case, adding yourself into the other thing means that there's a gap until you get to the point where you can take care of yourself while doing the thing that you're doing. Well, the problem is, or at the very least the problem would have been, it's not now, but it would have been, that you are going to be dependent on the money from YouTube when you start off, because it's so substantial. Well, not substantial, but it's more than nothing. Essentially, it's like a part-time job of sorts. At the point where if they rip it away just over the blue, and completely, this is overnight. So it's not something where you plan for it. It's not something where you get a warning about it. It's just, we're done. There's no way to appeal. We're just kind of making this shit up as we go along. That's kind of how it is. Let's see. Can you show us another calmer other than the one you're sitting at all the time? I don't know what that means. George H.W. Bush, cardiologist, killed by a hitman. Are you serious? No way. No way. We know you're not doing this for the money, and that's a big reason we support you. It makes us feel better, more honest channel, in my opinion. Oh, fair enough. Do this for the money. No, I don't do it for the money, but it's required, if that makes sense. There's this odd, it's like this odd interplay between the two things. I get weirded out by it, but you require it. It's like, for whatever reason, maybe that's a lefty thing. That's the lefty thing. We're somewhat distrustful of people doing it for the money. Are you going to join Nico House's network? I don't think so. I'm not necessarily looking for another network. Albert Dupontel, look it up. You have the name. I left it on code. I'll look it up. Yeah, I'm not joining Nico House's network. I'm not joining anybody's network as far as I know. Attorney's lawsuit won't work. Jamal will go broke long before it gets to court. It's designed that way. Yeah, like you would need like a free, Jared Beck taking the DNC to court. God, man, that's so fucking awesome. Like, now but he can do that. He's a lawyer. Like, he's a lawyer in his spirit, and he does that for a job. So that's his thing. You don't do it for the money, but you need the money to do it genuinely. And yeah, that's the crux of the issue. Imagine a society where that wasn't true, where your basic needs are met. If you wanted to do videos, look, I've met people in my life who were the nicest people on the planet. Nicest people on the planet. Nicest person you would ever get the luxury to bump into and come across. Absolute flower children. Total, complete, absolute. Couldn't keep a job if you pinned it to their chest. Like, if you said, look, here's a safety pin. I am pinning this to you, and this is some semblance of a job. It would fall off. Like, 2 left feet. Couldn't function. Had the hardest time that you would ever come across functioning in this particular society. That person shouldn't go broke and hungry. Just because that person is somewhat of a fuck up in the sense of our society, while at the same token, being a decent goddamn person. I think our wires are crossed in the way we look at this stuff. It really is. What, Jamal Thomas is still going? Looks like y'all will be here with me while I make dinner, or it's the other way around. I'll be with you here in the chat room. Ah, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, I'm going to end this. I am ending this Shawari. Because I want to eat dinner before it gets bad. I will see you guys in a few. This is going to be a late night. Now, tomorrow, I am going to be on a radio station. It's not going to be Fault Lines. It's going to be... God damn it. It's in D.C. It's in Washington, D.C. It's going to be with... what is the name of that radio station? It's going to be with Nixon. It's going to be with Garland Nixon, but I can't think of the name of the radio station. It's bigger than than Fault Lines, but it should be good. But that one's not till 6 p.m. tomorrow, so I'm going to be doing shows in the morning and I'm doing shows tonight. So no, it's not Front Lines. Front Lines it's Fault Lines. It's not Fault Lines. Fault Lines is one in the morning. Garland Nixon has one that he does in the evenings also that supposedly has a larger wattage. I think he said 50,000 watts. So I don't know what that translates into homes or area distance, but apparently it's larger. So Pacifica. That's it. Pacifica Radio. I don't know if that means anything to anybody. So Frontline wasn't Chappelle's show. Frontline was that's a show on PBS. Cal Kalinske is going to be on Fox News Sunday at 11 a.m. Nice! Fucking A, lefties. The populist revolt. I love it. I love it. All right. I'm going to end this. If you guys enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys. And I really do appreciate the help you guys give to the show. And I will see you guys probably in another 30 minutes or so. Thanks, everyone.